So we have the staff report. Carlos?
Right. Thank you, Chairman Edsel and members of the Planning Commission. RPD 202 is an application from Lustra Development, LLC, for the development of an 11,830 square foot apartment complex consisting of 8 two-bedroom rental units. The applicant is requesting a density bonus and other incentives for a reduction of open space. In exchange, the developer will provide one low-income affordable unit within the project. The 0.34-acre project site consists of 2 parcels that are located at the southeast corner of Glen and Chapel Drives within the city's residential plan development RPD zone. The properties are bordered on the south by a single-family residence and an apartment complex in the rural exclusive RE zone in the residential plan development RPD zone. To the north across Chapel Drive is a basketball court and parking lot in the RE zone. To the west across Glen Drive is a single-family home in the single-family residential R1 zone. To the east is a parking lot for an apartment complex in the RE zone. The site was approved as a parking lot under SUP 24 for a church located at 99 Glen Drive. The church is no longer in operation, and the property at 99 Glen Drive is under review for the development into a mixed-use project under CUP 391. The Camarillo General Plan Land Use Map designates the property as high-density residential, which allows for a density between 18.1 and 30 dwelling units per acre maximum. The proposed project proposes a density of 23.5 units per acre, which is consistent with the General Plan Land Use designation. The General Plan circulation element identifies Glen and Chapel Drives as local streets. A public hearing notice has been advertised for tonight's Planning Commission meeting to all property owners within 600-foot radius of the project site at the Camarillo City Hall and the city's website, and a publication in the Camarillo Acorn. On this slide, we can see the existing picture of the parking lot. This is looking east from the southwest corner of Chapel and Glen Drive. The development plans for RPD 202 proposes to construct an 8-unit residential apartment complex consisting of 2 two-story buildings. The proposed project includes 16 attached enclosed garage spaces. The buildings are oriented to have the front doors facing Chapel Drive with vehicular access to the attached garages located at the rear of the building. The project will provide a 20-foot front setback to the westerly property line, 26 feet to the southerly property line, 2.5 feet from the northerly property line, and 27 feet to the easterly property line. The proposed 2-story building are configured to be side-by-side with a 10-foot separation between the buildings, which provides adequate air, light, pedestrian walkway, and landscaping. The Planning Commission has the ability to set the required setbacks with the approval of a residential plan development permit. Vehicular access will be provided to the site via a driveway on Chapel Drive and on Glen Drive. The driveway entrances will provide 10 feet of decorative pavement. An accessible path of travel for pedestrians will be provided from the sidewalk on Glen and Chapel Drives into the property. The development will provide a building coverage of approximately 39% of the site, a hardscape coverage of approximately 46%, landscaping 15%, and additionally, the proposed project provides approximately 4% of the site as common usable open space. The project complies with all the development standards in the RPD zone, with the exception of the common usable open space. The applicant has requested a concession for a reduction of common usable open space in exchange for providing one affordable unit within the project. The development meets all the requirements because the project will provide one low-income unit, which requires 2 on-site parking spaces per unit, resulting in a total of 16 parking spaces. The submitted plan shows a 2-car garage for each unit for a total of 16 enclosed spaces in compliance with the code. The submitted floor plan shows that the front doors to each of the units will be faced Chapel Drive, and direct access to the garages will be provided on the south side of the property at the rear of the building. A half bath and kitchen area will be provided on the first floor, with 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a laundry room and a living room area on the second floor. No elevators will be provided. The 2-bedroom units range in size from 1,456 to 1,515 square feet. On this slide, we can see the proposed first floor plan, and as you can see, the garages will be on the back, the kitchen on the front. The proposed second floor, as soon as you go up on the stairs, you have a bedroom on the left side, and a living room on the right side, and another bedroom close to the living room. The proposed apartment buildings have been designed in a Santa Barbara style of architecture and incorporates architectural elements such as sand stucco finish, clay tile roof, decorative metal rails, decorative cornices, Spanish-style ceramic tiles, decorative corbels, fabric awnings, and stone veneer. The elevation shows 2-story buildings to measure approximately 25 feet in height, consistent with the RPD zone. On this slide, we can see the proposed north elevation of the proposed buildings. This is facing on Chapel Drive. The main entrances, as you can see, they're facing to the front. This is the proposed south elevation of the building with the garage, where you can see the garage entrances and some decorative bay windows on there. The top elevation is the proposed west elevation, and the one on the bottom is the east elevation. This is the proposed 2 buildings side by side. The one on the top is the north elevation, and the one on the bottom is the south elevation. The main body of the residential buildings will be white in a white color with dark browns beams, dark brick red awnings, and metal accents. And the precast window sills and corners will be a medium light tan color, and a medium dark gray color will be used on the window frames and doors. Exterior lighting will be provided around the building for security and visibility. Additionally, all exterior lighting will be reviewed to ensure that the lighting is arranged as to prevent glare and direct illumination on the streets or adjoining properties. And again, on this proposed rendering, you can see how well the design of the building goes with the colors as well as the building. You can see some stone veneer around the main entrances of the building, and the metal details in some of the windows. The staff is recommending the special conditions of the project as listed on the screen. Condition 164 and 165 requires the developer to comply with the water and energy conservation measures in accordance with the development allotment point assignments. Condition 188 requires the project to provide a clay barrel tile. Condition 190, a development allotment application must be approved by the City Council before construction. Condition 192, 93, and 94 requires the applicant must enter into an affordable housing development agreement for review and approval by the city attorney prior to the issuance of a building permit. The project was reviewed in accordance with CEQA guidelines and was determined to be categorically exempt under Class 32 infill development. Staff has received 2 letters addressing lighting, setback, and noise and open space. There are draft conditions attached to this report that address lighting and noise. The setbacks are established through the RPD permit, and the affordable units allow for the reduction in the common usable open space. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of RPD 202 subject to the attached conditions of approval. The action of the Planning Commission is final unless an appeal is to be filed within 10 days of the day of the action. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Yeah, Beverly?
Will we be able to ask questions later from the developer?
Yes, yeah, when the developer comes in, yeah.
I'll hold my questions.
Do you have any comments?
The comment I had was relation to the 4,000 square feet of open space normally required. So there's obviously a significant reduction in exchange for the affordable housing unit. One doesn't necessarily have any relationship to the other as far as it accommodating that reduction in what would be normally the reason you would need 4,000 square feet. Can you just kind of walk me through that?
Yeah, so there's not a direct relation to saying, I think what you're getting at is if there's a 50% reduction in the open space, there's a reduction somewhere else there's a nexus. Mm-hmm. So on this one, according to state density bonus law and the concessions, is that the developer can select a concession for any of the development standards, and we basically have to accept it unless we can find there's a finding of, and you might need to help me with this, that it's detrimental to the public's health and safety. So basically our hands are tied on which one they select. We can't say, okay, use it on this one. It's completely up to the developer, and if they want to reduce setbacks or if they want to reduce any other development standard, it's their choice.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Talmadge?
I have some questions specifically about conditions on the project. And I don't know if now is the appropriate time to ask them or to hold on.
Yeah, I think you should ask staff.
Ask them now?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. First off, has the applicant filed a lot line adjustment or merger for the project?
No.
Pardon?
No.
It is required to do so prior to.
Yes, it's a condition of approval, and then once they get into the detailed design, they'll process that.
Okay. Looking at some of the conditions, I'm going to be jumping around, but there's a number that appear to me to be extraneous, probably not applicable, but anyway, I'm going to ask them. Number 50 says landscape areas, including golf courses and athletic fields, must be designed with efficient irrigation. There are no golf courses or athletic fields. Why do we have that here?
Went off, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So condition 50 does fall under the stormwater quality category. So conditions 38 through 67 are stormwater quality, and that is a section where our stormwater group, they try to comply, of course, with the Ventura County permit. They're the permittee, we're co-permittees, and it's a regulation by the state. So our particular region is the LA Regional.
I understand an NPDES permit and
right.
compliance
So,
with that. But what does that have to do with
Yes.
golf courses and athletic fields?
So the Stormwater Committee, so our group participates in the Stormwater Committee, which is made up again of the permittee and all the cities, and they've come up with standardized language. We agree some of this language where you want to, maybe take out phrases, they hesitate to do that at this time because they do get audited by the regional board in the state, and they don't want to get dinged for that. So some of the conditions, for example, they do have landscape areas, but you're right, they don't have a golf course. So the landscape areas of that condition do apply. So that's why you're going to see actually in a few of these conditions, it does apply, or there may be some unforeseen things that we don't see until the detailed design, and they want to make sure it's covered again because we get audited by the state. So these are standardized conditions.
Well, again, I understand. Right. I understand in the context of the NPDES permit, and perhaps it ought to be there.
So
common car wash is provided. I don't see any provision for a common car wash.
Yeah, again, the whole stormwater section is standardized. Whether or not in the future the CUP does run with the property, whether it's something that's proposed and approved later, then this condition is already there and how it's supposed to be dealt with. So that's why they are choosing to keep these conditions.
Number 53, it says, in so many words, and wrecked vehicle storage areas must be covered and constructed. Where are the wrecked vehicle storage areas?
53 or which number?
Number 53, third line, or second and third line.
53202. All material storage there and handling areas?
Right, and then, and wrecked vehicle storage areas must be covered, constructed, impermeable
And
pavement.
that may be similar to the golf courses. It may be someone gets in a car accident and they get their car towed to their space, and whether or not it should be there, this is what you do while it's there until it gets towed to get fixed. Those are some of the things they look at. Again, it's not necessarily something we see at this preliminary stage, but again, as part of the program, they are required to have all these.
Number 55, fuel dispensing areas. I didn't see anything about a fuel dispensing area. And 56 talks about food facilities, and there's no food facilities in this.
Again, the same standardized language. I do understand from our stormwater group that they are going to, we just hired on a new consultant to take over the stormwater starting yesterday, July 1st, with the new fiscal year. And in talking to them about these conditions, they are going to try to at least present to the committee and break up these conditions to where these are the conditions for an RPD type. This is for commercial. This is for industrial, and try to at least categorize. And so you don't see, I agree, some of these conditions, I totally hear what you're saying.
Right.
And at least try to break it into categories that truly relate to residential or truly relate to commercial. So at this time, these are the standardized language of the committee. And at the end in the design, or if they never have a fuel tank, then there's nothing to comply with.
Under water and fire protection, 68A, B, and C, it talks here about the project's total water demand, that they have to submit a plan for approval. And then before will serve letters, do you also require payment of connection fees prior to will serve?
That's correct. So we have the water conservation component where the actual water that they're going to need, their demands, they have to bring to the site. Perhaps they can find an existing user in the city's water division that they can maybe make more efficient of their irrigation, or, whatever type of program qualifies. There's a list in a council resolution of things that they can go out and find water, and I believe the developer's currently working with our water administrator trying to find out how to bring water. Aside from that, when they actually come to us during the detailed design and say, turns out we need a 3-inch meter, then they will pay the capital fees. Like you said, there are two different things. So there will be fees for the water meters.
Right. Continuing on. (165) under water and energy conservation, and it talks, number 165A, talks about units pre-plumbed for solar water heating with one or more of the following: stub-in supply service line at hot water heater. Are these units individually, do they have a central hot water system or individual per unit?
Well, this is something that the applicant should be able to answer, because these conditions of approval were in place on this residential plan development permit after, the developer submitted a development allotment application, and they actually selected all of this as part of, the things that they need to do to conserve water and to get more points for the allocation.
Okay, because solar systems, you either have an individual per unit or you have some common tank or something. And it's just, I'm curious about that, why the condition is here if they're not going to have it. And electrical vehicle chargers, is that normally they're associated with a individual unit? so they can pay their electricity. How is it planned here if you had an electric charging station?
And again, that's something that, maybe the applicant should be able to answer because they're the ones that selected this as part of the development allotment.
Yeah, I'm not against having these things.
Yeah. No.
I just want to know, how is it going to be done?
Right.
So, I'll stop at this point. I think you get the gist of my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I took those as being general, but they were, the theme of all those was not having water runoff and not having fertilizer and things run into the common water area, and they just, written pretty broadly, but the specific thing in there. So I know we don't have a golf course and all that, but it referred to landscaping and such as, and
Exactly.
it was overly broad, but I can see it as a standard condition. So.
Yes, and they'll try to get it more in line with the types of projects that come forward in
Yeah.
the future.
That would be very beneficial. Thank you.
Yeah, the one question I had, and maybe David can explain it, I know that we have some state mandated, the cities have state mandated rules that they're, really pushing to have everybody provide affordable housing and stuff. So, and I'm a little unclear on what our limitations are, because you talked about some of the things the state trumps our local law. And so what, on this particular project, what kind of things, like for instance, before the state's new legislation, were there some things on here that wouldn't be allowed that now are allowed?
Well, the state continues to change the housing laws as we have experienced in the last few years. Where we're able to, I guess, receive an affordable unit in this project is through the density bonus and concessions ordinance, which is mandated by the state. And as I kind of mentioned before, it's the developer picks. We can't pick what either development concession that they select, or if they select to increase density, so long as they provide some affordable units. So in this case, they selected the one, and they'll be providing that affordable unit, which then we can count towards our regional housing needs allocation, or our RHNA, which is also mandated by the state.
And that includes rental units as well, right?
Yes, it's yes. Under the density bonus ordinance, it's both rental and ownership.
So then what type of an agreement with the developer would be? It would just be the limitation on the rental amount charged for the one unit or for the whole project?
It'll be, yes, and more. It'll be an affordable housing agreement that's recorded against the property, and specifying that one of the units needs to be rented out to the appropriate household, meeting that income category requirement, and they change every year. The state changes the income requirements, and also the rent is limited to the calculation.
And they have a formula for that?
Yep.
And then as far as the construction, does the material used in the designated affordable unit, does it have to be the same as the other unit so that you wouldn't be able to tell that's the affordable one?
Right. If you're looking at the unit from the exterior, it's identical.
How about in the interior?
Interior, we recommend them to have at least the minimum, for example, if it's ownership, we'd say that they have to have the base model, but they don't have to have like the options, the upgrades on that. But for rental, we encourage them to have similar materials.
So if there's a recorded agreement for rental units, then these units will always be rental units? They not necessarily.
For a period of time, yes, and for rental, it's 55 years.
But I mean, could they be converted to condos or anything like that for sale units, or is that's a question for a different day?
They would have to go through a process to do that, and as long as they're providing the equivalent amount of affordable housing at that income level and for that unit type, I think we would be open to something like that. But then at that time, we would take that opportunity to extend the covenant another 55 years to preserve the affordable unit even longer.
Okay. And I had one other question about the current use seems to be a parking lot, but I've gone by there different times of of day and different days, and it seems like no cars ever parked there. Is anybody use that as a overflow parking for the apartments on Holly, or is it private parking, or how?
It's technically private parking. It's not, yeah, and I've driven by a few times. I haven't seen any cars parked in there either.
Can I add one thing? When I was on the other side of it, it did have a sign up that's permit parking only. So it's assigned to somebody.
So I was just, I guess, trying to get in my head if by building this, is it removing parking from somebody else that's using it now, but I never saw anybody parked there. So-
In the past, it was attached. There's a reciprocal parking agreement with the CUP site, Kitty Corner, to provide overflow parking for that. I think it was a church at the time.
Oh, okay. And
That's gone. Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah,
That's probably
they
why nobody's
terminated that,
parking there.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I get it.
So it's not taking away parking from someone else.
Okay, great. So this is a time we would open the public testimony and just remind you that we want to hear everybody's opinion, and Jamie's going to set the timer for 3 minutes, and I'll just start calling these in. Well, I guess, I'm sorry, the applicant would come up first. I'm sorry.
Yes, Chair. It might be good to call up the applicant so they could provide some clarification questions or a presentation about this proposal, and then afterwards open it up to the
Okay.
rest of the public comment.
Thank you. I knew that. Okay, if the applicant would come forward and please state your name for the record.
Andy Bratz, B-R-A-T-Z. Good evening, Commissioners, staff, and public. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. I'm honored to be in front of you I'm honored to be in front of you all with our proposed project this evening. I would like to introduce myself as stated, Andy Bratz. I'm a lifelong resident of Camarillo of 48 years, and I care deeply about what happens to our community. We have enjoyed working closely with the planning staff, building and safety, fire department, and public works staff for the last 2 years on this project, and we've worked closely with them to make what we feel is the best possible project for this community. As the lead designer on this project and a designer of the last 28 years, and working closely under architect Greg Bryant, I have put my heart and soul into the design, as I myself love our community and only want the best for this project, the residents, and the area and the community as a whole. This site, being so narrow, was very difficult to design with the local and state guidelines and codes. We came up with over 25 designs over the last 2 years and went back and forth with all the departments to make the best it could be by meeting all the agency requirements. I feel we have not only made this project meet the Camarillo style guidelines, but we have made the effort to make it a notch above architecturally speaking. Thank you for your time and your input on this project, and we hope you like it as much as we do.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rick Town, and I am the CEO of Lustra Development. And tonight, I want to thank you for letting us present our project to you. It's been a couple years in the making, and because it was at one time tied to the property Kitty Corner, it became a semi-challenging project with parking requirements for both properties, having to break the chain that they had between them. And basically, it made us have to address, every time we addressed one portion of one project, we had to go address that portion with the other project. So staff has been very helpful, and at the same time, they're very stringent on the requirements for each. And it took a while to get through the designs. You have garages in the front, now we have them in the back. We had clumped buildings in the middle, now we have them linear. So there are a lot of things that we went through to get to where we are, and while we've carried this for 2 years, we're pretty excited about the opportunity to improve the area and provide housing with a great architectural style, and we appreciate you guys and the commission allowing us to present tonight. Thank you. And I'd be happy to, if you need me to answer questions to the public later, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, we'll see if any commissioners have questions at this time. No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we'll go to the cards, and just in the order I have here, Gail Crabtree. And then Jamie, you'll work the timer, please. Thank you. And if you just please state your name for the record.
Sure, it's Leah Gale Crabtree. Can y'all hear okay?
Yes, uh-huh.
Tell me when to go.
Go.
Oh, this is go, sorry. First of all, as was mentioned, I live there 24/7, facing the area which will be the garages, facing my bedroom and my living room and patio. That is used regularly for parking. There are 5 of us that I know of that get either daily or regular help from healthcare workers who live in the building that I live in, Parkland Seniors. And that's the only place for guest parking to park. When I have people come for a Bible study on a certain night of the week, they have to park there if we're going to park. It's used regularly by the parish people on Sundays when there's a wedding and other opportunities there. It is used regularly for parking. I don't know that that affects your decision, but I did want to clarify that fact for you since the question had been asked. I think you all have a copy of the lengthy email I sent with my concerns for the parish, for the person who recently bought the building I live in, who's trying to make it more attractive for seniors, and also for the effect of construction on the seniors, and for the merchants downtown that need more money if it's really going to be a place for nighttime entertainment that's going to build up that area of Old Town. It needs parking. I don't know if this is the place to solve that problem, but it does need parking desperately. I just want to add to that, please read the email. I meant every word of it and thought and prayed it through. But I just want to add to that a concern I did not mention. Those of us who are seniors in the 55-plus bracket that are being catered to by the building itself, which, by the way, I think is gorgeous. It's well done. And I don't know how you got all that stuff on that skinny property. But anyway, my problem is I live there, as I say, 24/7. I have some health issues, one of which means I'm going to have to move if you construct. I don't know who else may have to move. We recently had half the building moved because it was too much stress just trying to upgrade the apartments we were living in. I did not make that cut. I chose to stay. But my physical condition with the amount of noise that can't be helped when you construct is going to require me to move. I don't know if it require others or not, but I do think if there is a concern for housing for the 55-plus generations,
Okay.
my voice needs to be heard. I have 27 seconds.
You
and
do.
my voice is that we have some health concerns that relate to the construction and the noise and the dust and the other nonsense that goes on there. And I also don't understand what's going to happen to the garbage for the people next door and if that's going to affect the atmosphere in which the cat and I live. That's all I had to say. Thank you, though, for your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming and giving us your input. And at the end of the public hearing, we'll have staff comment on some of the issues that are brought up. Okay, next is Carol Duran. Or Duran, is it? Duran. Okay.
I moved here from Los Angeles, where they destroyed the living there because they just kept tearing down the single-family dwellings and building multi-dwellings, and the population grew and the cars. And so I got out of there, came here for your low population, for your small-town living, to find out that on Springville, 1,500 new homes are going up. You figure 2 to 3 cars per home, that's another 4,500 cars. In the short time that I've been here, it's already, I can see a big change. I'd go to Trader Joe's, I'd easily park, go in, short lines. Now I'm driving around looking for a parking space, waiting in longer lines, and they've just begun to fill up Springville. But what I'm not understanding is, for some reason, you allowed them to build 1,500 new homes, and you're still allowing other people 300 homes here and 300 homes there. The population here is going to be crazy. The traffic, the parks, the schools, it's just going to be, you're going to make life miserable here. And what I've seen with population, when my mother moved to Burbank, it was low population. We would read the crime blotter together and laugh at the silly crime. It looks similar to the way Camarillo looks now, because you don't have any serious crime here. After the population exploded in Burbank, the violent crime, we were no longer laughing at the crime blotter, and I'm afraid that's going to happen here. When I was living in LA, if there was a noise disturbance on the weekend, you didn't bother calling. I moved to Camarillo, someone had a loud party, I called on a weekend, they came right over and asked them to quiet it down. It's just going to change the nice way we're living now into a miserable way of life. And I'm already hearing the residents of Camarillo saying they're thinking about where they're going to go because you're destroying the city. So please, let's keep the population down here and not allow all the new residents.
Thank you for your input. Okay, Deborah Schmidt. If you just please state your name for the record.
I'm Deborah Schmidt. I've lived here in Camarillo 50 years. I've seen the change and the tremendous amount of change that's happening quickly at this time. My concern is how much more building is there going to be that we don't even know about yet, that maybe that you are thinking of doing, that the city council has heard about, or that you're hoping to bring in? And where's the limit that's going to be as far as people goes? As the lady just said, the population. My concern is these buildings that you're putting in with 2-3 bedrooms, there's going to be children in those homes. And how are our schools equipped for these kids right now with the schools that we have now? It doesn't seem to me so. Our water's going to be taxed with how much water there is for everywhere. Our roads, the congestion on the freeway, our markets, our everything. Is there a limit to what you're going to allow our population here in our town to go? That means the whole green belt will be gone from here to Oxnard. There'll be no more green that we see. Are we going to just see a sea of cement? That, to me, is not what Camarillo stands for, is. And when our children and come back here, that were raised here, come back to visit or whatever, Camarillo is not what it was. And I realize that I probably have a blind's eye that things shouldn't change. I realize things do change. But our community that we had, small town, where you knew everybody, where a certain amount of safety is here, I think that it's being tampered with. So that's just my thoughts for today. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your thoughts. Okay, Candy Vasquez.
Good evening. My name is Candy Vasquez. I have been a resident of Camarillo, especially 164 Holly Drive, for 30 years now. So I've had many instances of, that area. I can tell you first and foremost that parking lot is used regularly, as some of the other residents stated. When for the church, the parish uses it, overflow for the fiesta that happens every year. That parking lot is utilized. Let's see. And just my overall concern is that this new housing development that is being, proposed, the congestion on Holly Drive, it's going to affect our street already. We already, have the new buildings that are, basically, I don't see why we should have more housing. I think the main problem is that we need parking, we need space. And, Camarillo is already building more homes in Springville, Village at the Park, and then now again on Lewis. So those housing are already being built. Another concern, construction will disturb the residents. And lastly, I know Camarillo, I love this city with my whole heart. I've grown up here and I plan to raise my family here in the future. But I feel like it's taking a toll on our old town Camarillo, the atmosphere that we're trying to keep. By doing that, by making these buildings, it doesn't go with the look of the neighborhood. Yes, it is a Spanish style, architecture, but, for speaking as a resident and one of the homeowners, it doesn't go with the vibe. It doesn't go with the feel of the city. It just is going to construct more disturbances, construction. Like, I am not looking forward to, should this happen, all the construction happening, where am I going to go? I'm going to have to literally go all the way around to go into my home because all the parking, and I know the big trucks there. It's just, no. I would, my thoughts would be use it wisely. And I know in one of the notice of public hearing, it says that the public is, that area is always cleaned by, the service. It's not. Usually it's us, having to call and being like, hey, this parking lot is a little run down. Can you help, maintain it? But if you were guys to maintain it and clean it up, I think it would be utilized and it would be beneficial for, the space and parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Vanessa Blazer. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did, actually.
good.
Good job. Good evening. My name is Vanessa Blazer. I'm a resident in Camarillo. I've lived here with my husband for about 12 years now. Currently just purchased a home at 106 Palm Drive, across from where we've lived for 6 years. And currently there is a 3-story townhome area with 1 car garage per unit. And I can definitely say that those units are not being used for parking. There's parking that's being taken up on the street, blocking our driveways, especially during those, great times that we have in Camarillo with the fiesta and everything. The overcrowding takes a toll, especially I drive from Burbank to come home, and there's nowhere for me to park. And I do the drive because I love Camarillo and I love the small town feel. But unfortunately, I feel like that's just been slowly, or actually more quickly, the last few years disappearing. And although I do appreciate the fact that the building is beautiful, and there seems to be a lot of thought put into the construction and the setup of the building, again, parking. We have limited parking. Old Town, they're putting in new commercial all the time, renovating older buildings, more apartments. So although those garages are there, they're not going to be necessarily used. They're going to be parking out on the street. They're going to be parking in front of our home. There's a lot of congestion already on Palm Drive. I live next door to a home with 3 little girls that can't, play in the street because we have people driving up and down. So it's disconcerting. I love Camarillo, and I love that we can kind of keep it up and bring in new buildings. But I definitely think if we could do it in a smart way, as opposed to just allowing certain things to be bypassed, 3-story buildings, limited parking. I mean, there's got to be something else that we can kind of do to maybe limit what type of properties and the amount of properties we're putting in these small spaces.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your input. Okay, then next is Mike Schilling.
Mike Schilling, I'm the loudmouth. Nothing more that I really can say that my wife didn't already say, except one of the things that hasn't been addressed, or maybe was addressed once, was the privacy issue. If that 3-story building, which is a beautiful building, and I do sympathize with you guys. I know that California is really putting the screws to you guys as far as building stuff, unfortunately, and it's kind of taken its toll on Camarillo. If the 3-story building, and I know I'm not supposed to talk about that because we're going to talk on the 16th, but if that gets built, looking right over into our backyard, looking right into everybody's backyard, there's no privacy anymore. Our way of life has just changed because that building went up. If there was a way to change that, 2-story, put enough parking in there. There's 12 spaces that are going to go for a 12 unit apartment complex. A lot of those are two-bedroom units, which means that a lot of those people are going to have 2 cars, which means 12 parking spots isn't going to cut it. 6 apartments would be proper. 2 spaces for each apartment, something like that. Just a compromise to keep that area from being too congested. The 3-story townhomes that are already there are just creating havoc on the parking in that area. Unfortunately, the place we stayed in didn't have a driveway, so we were forced to park on the street, which means when my wife came home from Burbank, she rarely had a parking spot. So this is just going to make matters worse. We have lovely things like the Fiesta, and we have beer and wine walks. We have all sorts of fun stuff in Camarillo that requires parking. Why not keep that a parking space that isn't marked as being restricted? That's public parking. Leave it as parking. That's all I have to say. I
Great.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, is it Elon Gabriel? Oh, Edward, okay. Sorry about that. I think it was your handwriting.
How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I've been living in Camarillo now for 15 years. I live on Glen Drive, and I'm going to bring up some things I don't think anyone's brought up yet. Across from where they want to build this unit is a paramedic station. So they have ambulances there that, of course, head out from that station. I don't know if you guys know that. On Glen Drive, on the back of that drive, is where the city has their yard, and the trucks go up and down that street all day long. They were talking about moving the city yard out by the, I believe, the airport, but they still have the trucks running up and down all day long. Also, Roadrunner Shuttle is in the back of that street. They were running the buses up and down that street several years ago. I had a talk with the owner of Roadrunner. They decided to do a special easement back by the railroad tracks, and I talked with her personally about doing that. So I believe Roadrunner now is using the easement. St. Mary Magdalene Church, when the parents come up and pick up their kids, they come down Chapel Drive. So that's going to be an issue there with the bottleneck. There's also a bottleneck when you head on Glen Drive down to Ventura Boulevard. That's a bad intersection. That's a horrible intersection. I don't know if you guys ever been out there in rush hour, but that is nearly impossible to make that left turn out of there, and that's very dangerous. So I don't see how they're going to be able to have the parking. That's a high-density area there, very high density in that small space. I don't see how that's all going to work out with the Catholic Church, the existing traffic on Glen Drive, and like I said, the intersection on Ventura Boulevard and Glen. That's a bad intersection. They almost need a light there. I've witnessed accidents there. And I don't know if you guys know about, I said earlier about the paramedic station right across the street from there. So I think this is a bad idea. I live a few doors down. I walk off my front porch. I can see the church. And if I can't see that church anymore, I don't want to live here. I will turn my house into a rental unit and move. Because I love living here. I've been here, say, 15 years, and I'm totally against this project. For safety, for parking, that a lot of guys have brought up, because, like they say, they're going to use their parking thing for storage, like they do on the existing units, and they'll park on the street. And street parking is already bad. I have rental units beside where I live, and they have 3 or 4 people living in there, 5, 6 people, and they fill up the street on Glen. So it's only going to get worse. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, looks like Lorraine Coates. Lorraine, yes.
Good evening. Thank you for the privilege of being able to express some of my concerns. I live at 111 Holly Drive. I live in a lovely senior housing. However, I think with this new development coming in, if I read this right, there is going to be an entrance and an exit on Chapel, and an entrance and an exit on Glen. Well, good luck. I hope these people don't have to exit onto Chapel at the beginning of the school day and the ending. I can tell you it's impossible. Not only from Glen clear up to where the Catholic school is, it's bumper to bumper to bumper. A lot of them now are turning on Holly so they don't have to pull out onto Glen, and going down the fire lane between my senior apartments and the green apartments. So it's like a thoroughfare, not a fire lane. I notice with all the developing that's going on, and I'm sure with 2-bedroom units, there'll be children. Where did the children go to play? How do they get across some of these streets? The parking in front of the park and across where the businesses are in the 12-unit apartment building is going up. There's a 2-way stop. I think we need a 4-way stop there. I think it's dire that you get one there, because the people who leave the church, unless they want to make a right-hand turn down to Ventura Boulevard, they have to cross Glen, and it's not easy. Also, when the big 3-story building with subterranean parking went in on Ventura, where do all the trucks go that deliver the things and take away the dirt? They go down Glen and turn on Grandview. So please consider the necessity of a 4-way stop at Glen and Chapel, because along the park, when people do park, how do they get out of there? They back out. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your input. Okay, Veronica Falara.
Veronica Falera. I live on 111 Holly Drive, apartment 209 upstairs. And I saw the blueprint, and item 3 is your trash can, which is 8 foot away from my balcony. I live in Camarillo since 1963. I have seen a lot of changes. I moved there because it's a senior building. We have a little bit view. So this is my main concern. Also, the lights on the garage not lighting up to the other property, our other balconies. The other concern I have is the traffic. For the last 5 years I lived there. I see St. Mary Magdalene's traffic. The last year and a half you had opened the parking lot where you're building now or planning on, and the traffic is a little bit less. Every morning and every afternoon, people go through there. And with that other exit or with that building coming up, there's no parking for these people. Before you opened that parking lot, they used our parking spaces. And I finally got them through that this is reserved parking. But it's the traffic I'm concerned. There's a lot of children walking. This is not built for new complexes come up. This is a retirement community. And seniors deserve the right to have peace and quiet. And allowing the building and the dust and dirt, we have to go through for another year before this is even established. So mainly the traffic and the trash cans are my concern. Traffic definitely. Because you're building across the street also, and there's traffic now. I see it every morning, I see it every afternoon. I love my view, I love the kids playing on the basketball court, ball falls over, there's traffic. This is a hazard for our children in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then was there anybody else that wants to speak on this agenda item? I don't have any more blue cards, but I'd like to read on the record. I have a pink card, which is a nonverbal public comment card from Nanette. It looks like I'll Alforez, I think, and it's, her comments are public garbage already exists in the senior housing a few yards from proposed location of her garage. Trees will be cut down, so that's her input. And then in the packet that we got presented tonight, we had I just wanted to acknowledge it for the record, but we got a 3-page email from Pete Wessel, that's a neighbor. He lives, he doesn't give the address, but he lives in the house adjacent to it, and he has a series of issues that he brings up that I think were expressed tonight by other people as well, but that'll be entered in the record, and I'd like maybe staff to comment on some of his comments. And then we had another email today from Linda Peterson that she was concerned about the apartment lights that shine directly into her living room and bedroom windows, and then she was concerned about the noise level. So I think if nobody's coming forward, we'll close the public comment. And then we'll move on to the Architectural Review Committee. And were you going to give that report, Mr. Talmadge?
The Architectural Review Committee did meet and considered this project, and the committee approved the design as presented by the architect. We thought it was an excellent design, good use of materials, and the various features of the building, the fenestration, and little setbacks and details were well handled.
Thank
We
you.
approved it.
And I apologize, I got a little ahead of myself. I didn't give staff the opportunity to respond to some of the public comments. Did you have some responses?
So we think we should give the opportunity to the developer to first respond.
Oh, okay, is that the public hearing still open to do that? Is that, and then it would.
Commissioner, I don't think we need to reopen the public hearing. I mean, these are going to be clarification questions to be put in the record from both the applicant and the staff side.
Okay. Yeah, apologize for that. Go ahead.
Sure. All of the neighbors' comments and concerns are taken into consideration. I actually met with several of them, and everybody loved the architecture, and the ones who understood it really said they appreciated us pushing the building away from their building, and some of them acknowledged how much thought went into the planning of that, which our team has worked with the staff to get to this point. But there are some things I would agree with regards to a potential four-way stop. On Chapel and Glen, because the cars do go fast and walking across is a little challenging. Now, these particular 8 units will be easy for the kids to walk directly across to the park because they're not crossing that maybe they're both busy, but one's going much faster than the other. So these are things that have been taken into consideration, and maybe the jurisdiction can, change some of the parking requirements or what have you around their places. But we did the best that we could to accommodate, given our rights and the zoning and what we were allotted and what we had to work with. Also, that is a private parking lot. It's private property. It's not really a parking lot. It just looks like one. And so we tried to contain it, and people cut the locks, they cut the chains, they just forced their way in. And a lot of vagrants are there in the evenings, and we've had some motorhomes and some sketchy situations that we've had to confront. We're trying to make the neighborhood, we're trying to improve the neighborhood, but obviously that doesn't fit everybody's agenda, and we totally understand that. What I mainly want to speak to is the comments by one of your, I think you said it was a 3-page email. We met with that gentleman, and he put in writing that if we gave him an access easement, he would fully support our project. He loved the architecture, and he loved the way we set it back and all. And but then he came at us and threatened us and said that if we didn't, he would not support the project, and he'd write emails like he did. So we had a meeting with our attorney with him, and he said it in front of us. He said it to staff, and he's a very interesting person that he would basically state that if you give me this, I'll do that to my project, and if you don't, I'll oppose it. So I just want to make it clear that maybe his stuff is self-centered and serving, if you will.
And I had one follow-up question, but, like a couple comments on the lighting, on the architectural, and I think city has their requirements too, but do you have the kind of down lighting and things that you specifically took into account in the planning so that it would minimize any of those kind of issues, or?
Sure. I've been doing this about 25 years, and now it's pretty much a requirement that you cannot shine lights up into other people's houses. So it's pretty standard that you're turning lights that are on the walls that are vertical, that they're pointing down to minimize the impact on neighbors. And one of the things that we do is we try and put in the right size trees. We try and screen as much as we can for them, because it also serves our tenants, or if we're an owner, or we're selling whatever the project is that we're doing, we always go out of our way to try and screen to help both the neighbors and our tenants or our buyers. So I'm not touting my own, horn. I'm not saying that development's for everybody, but I am saying that we do our best to accommodate, because it's a reciprocal and collaborative effort to help each side with privacy, because the people in this unit don't want to, people looking in their windows and vice versa. So we do the best that we can to keep lighting off neighbors. The dust during construction, we always have water tanks or, heavy fire hoses that we're keeping the dust down. The state mandated air quality control is pretty stringent, so you have to, especially if you're going to demo something or grade something, you have to follow those guidelines. And they're pretty tough on the developer and the contractors, but it's what we have to do. So what I am saying to the neighbors is that we did the best we can in the designs, and we'll do our absolute best we can to keep down the dust. And one good thing is that we build really fast, and so we do things in a production system, and it speeds up the building significantly.
And then I just had kind of one follow-up question. There were a couple comments about the location of the trash receptacles. What kind of thought process goes in on locating those, or do you put in thought of how those are located?
There is a lot of thought that went into that. I know that went back and forth probably about 8 or 9 times. And you're limited to the locations. You're also limited to the space and the size of it and the proximity. So there is a tremendous amount of detail that goes into that trash, and perhaps it could be emptied quicker or more frequently. I don't know, but definitely a lot of thought went into that.
So is it a common dumpster for all the tenants, or do each of them have their own, like a residential property would?
There is no way to have individuals, because there's no place to store those cans, but that would be a common space for them.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a few questions. On the trash in the corner there, right now there's a nice big huge tree there. So is there any way to put some other trees that would grow up around the trash container and block that more from the apartments next door?
I believe there is. I actually remember meeting the lady who spoke last, and I think we cut a big limb down for her that was reaching out into her balcony, so I do remember her. So yeah, I do like trees. Those pepper trees are very aggressive, some of them that are there, and those have to come out, but we would absolutely put a tree in between that and her space. Now, if I'm not mistaken, her unit actually will look down the driveway or the access, so she'll still be able to see out. The building's not necessarily right there, so I think a tree would be a joint effort as to what height she may prefer it.
Okay.
Because I don't know if she wants to look directly at a tree or still be able to see the church and what have you. So we would be open to a suggestive tree or a couple of trees that would fit in there that would be reciprocating and
Okay.
accommodating.
And how close are the front doors to the sidewalk?
The front doors, it's not the front doors. Some of them have protruding architectural elements, but the door itself is like 5 feet
Okay.
back from the sidewalk.
Okay. When I look at the plans, I don't really see a lot of storage space inside the units. Are you planning on building any storage under the stairways at all, anywhere? Or would you consider, since these are rentals, putting any of those overhead storage racks in the garage? You know, like for people to use storage on?
Yeah, I think we would do both, actually. So what we do, like I said, I've been doing this a while, and we do everything from mixed-use projects to really super high-end custom homes. And when we build these homes, even though you design them on paper, you're always looking for storage because it is a big need for everybody. So we're looking for every nook and cranny that we can to create storage. And under the stairs
Okay.
is a great spot, and so is the overhead storage, which I have at my house currently in the garage and the way they fold up and what have you. And these are high garage ceilings, so they're, you know,
Okay.
they would accommodate.
Yeah, I was just thinking with rentals, you might not want the renters doing something themselves, but supply something for the renters to use.
Right.
And the other comment I had also had to go with the four-way stop, because when I was driving around the area, I went around and I was coming east on Chapel and wanted to go across Glen, but trying to ease forward enough with the parking that's on Glen to be able to see around to see if there are any cars coming towards me. I almost have to get into the intersection to see that. So, you know, I think anytime if we do put more residences there, it would be nice to be able to consider a four-way stop at that intersection.
Well, we even have, our office is on the corner. We use it occasionally. And there's a salon that rents from us right now. And when I'm there, which maybe a couple times a month, I too creep out and look around before I cross because a lot of people are going fast there. I don't know what the rules are, but it does seem like it would be beneficial to at least consider a four-way stop.
Yeah, we'll have staff comment on that when we're finished it. Go ahead.
That was all the questions I had right now.
How about you, Mr. Espinosa?
Well, I thought Beverly made a good point about the storage because I think having that addition might incentivize, you know, the occupants of the apartment building to use the garage rather than using the garage space as storage itself. So,
sure.
I think, and that might free up space out on the curbside and so forth that people are have expressed concerns about.
Sure, and maybe there's an ordinance you could pass that would keep people from parking overnight on the streets or what have you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions, Mr. Talmadge?
No, I was going to say, that's not our job. Just a general question. You've referenced having a couple of meetings with residents in the immediate vicinity. Did you have any general meetings of, say, the local residents or anything, or were they just one-on-one type meetings?
It was more one-on-one.
I see.
Yeah.
I
Those
see.
who called, those who came by.
Yes.
Everybody was polite except one person, but yeah, for the
You
most part,
mentioned
it was
that, yeah.
cordial.
Right. Was staff included in any of those meetings?
No, I think people met with staff on their own and then came by when we were around or called us.
I see. Okay.
It wasn't a joint.
Okay, so it's not like you had a, quote, public meeting about, you know, what's proposed or anything like that? It was more one-on-one stuff?
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moe, I don't know if staff wanted to comment on some of the things brought up, or?
I think majority of the comments were, had concerns about traffic, noise, and as well to parking. And some of the things that the applicant already pointed out, that this is not a public parking lot. This was a parking lot that was built for a building that is across the street. But now that building doesn't require for that parking, so therefore, they are using this for something else. Now, as far as the noise, some of the concerns for the people that have in regards to the noise construction, we do have a condition on our set of conditions here. If you can see, condition 160 basically states that, we have certain hours of operation for during the construction times, which is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And as well, the other concern about the trash enclosure location, we do have a condition as well, condition 159, that talks about that the final location of the trash enclosure will be reviewed by staff during plan check. And as far as the lighting concerns, we do have a condition as well. It's condition 173 that talks about that all lighting fixtures should be approved by the director and community development department during plan check.
Okay. Had a couple questions, I think, before we get into the comments too, is on a project this size, do we do a traffic study at all or determine, you know, what the impact is? And then also, who determines if we have, you know, we need a four-way stop as they talked about? And then my third question is, what does the city have planned, if anything, for increased parking in the Old Town area? I know they've had those public meetings on, you know, that prior county building and things, and I just wanted to know, was there a plan to add some parking to kind of lessen that impact for that whole area?
Mr. Chairman, the traffic engineer does review the development, and with the addition of the 8 homes, did not see an impact where that needed to be mitigated by the four-way stop, or even I heard perhaps a traffic signal down at Ventura Boulevard. So again, the addition of 8 units with this project related to traffic did not warrant any of that. If there's an existing, you know, problem that the developer is not required to take away, even if they weren't there. It sounds like there's somewhat of a problem, but the traffic division does look at just traffic counts and everything throughout the city and does know of hot spots. But again, for this project, the addition of the 8 units did not warrant.
With the comments made tonight, would they take a look about the need for a four-way stop there? Or
Again, yeah, the traffic division looks at everything throughout the city. If, you know, maybe people have put in requests before that, I do not know, but related to this development, it didn't trigger, you know, the addition of the 8 units did not trigger any of those impacts.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Oh, Chair Edsel, I just wanted to add, you know, Carlos had mentioned some of the conditions of approval, and I'm not as familiar with this project as he is, but I did want to note that one of the concerns was this fear of residents not using their garage for garage purposes. And I just wanted to point out that condition number 147 requires that the garages have to be used for the parking of vehicles. It's a requirement in the lease for all the residents. Okay. And if there is an issue, the property owner is required to enforce this requirement, and us as a city imposing this condition allows us to enforce this against the property owner.
Okay.
So if that becomes an issue, the citizens can always report that to the city, and code enforcement should address that.
Okay, now is that a typical condition that we have, or is that something new for this project? Because that sounds pretty good.
Yes, it is a typical condition that we usually have for, you know, apartment complexes or townhomes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, any questions? I guess we would get down into commissioner discussion and recommendation. And start with you, Mr. Talmadge.
Me to start?
Pardon me?
You want me to start?
Yeah, if you're ready, yeah.
Not so many questions as just comments. You know, we've heard and summarized here that there are concerns about traffic and then access onto the project, impacts of traffic, and parking in the vicinity, and I think those questions have been addressed. There's a general question of congestion, of just adding more cars to the area, and I think it's a legitimate concern, but I think that addressing that by either a traffic study or something the equivalent to take a look. We've heard perhaps the need for I don't know if another stoplight is required at the end of Glen Drive and Ventura Boulevard, but certainly a four-way stop at Chapel and Glen sounded like a reasonable suggestion. And the construction impacts, there were a number of people that addressed the noise, dust, and just the fact that a lot of trucks and heavy equipment may be operating in the area. Those are covered in the conditions. But I think we need to keep a close look on those so to make sure that we do minimize the impact on our residents in the vicinity. And the lighting and exposure of one property to another, I think that's been addressed as well, and that's important. And then my other question has already been answered. And I do note in looking at the drawing, the new driveway is actually split. One building is served by one driveway, and the other building is served by the other part of the driveway, and there's a landscape median in between. So I don't know if people had picked up on that. Well, there's not, there's one way over there.
Yeah.
But the building 2 essentially exits onto Chapel Drive, whereas building 1 exits onto Glen Drive. So it's not like everybody's going into one place, they're split between the two. But that does suggest that maybe a good look at the intersection of Glen Drive and Chapel is, I think, necessary in terms of traffic control. Thank you.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. or Beverly? Go ahead.
Thank you. I will say on the four-way stop, today what I noticed, today, it wasn't the traffic, it was the visibility, trying to see beyond the cars that are parked along the offices on the west side of Glen, trying to see around those cars to see if anybody's coming up the street from Ventura. And so if you add that plus the traffic at other times, but it was difficult. I had to really ease into the intersection before I felt it was safe to go across. So, and that was just as it was today with no traffic. But, so I do think that there is a concern there. I am concerned about storage and where they're going to put stuff. So if the developers can add storage racks, storage closets, storage anything, so they've got room to put the storage in there. And I understand the loss of all the beautiful trees that are there between the lot and the existing housing. But, if they can find some way to put some narrow growing trees up to kind of come up over the fence that is there apparently to kind of mitigate that a little bit, that would be great. The building does look really wonderful. It's just that it's on that narrow little lot, so it is really crowded in. Excuse me, but you do have the 20 feet at least between the fence and the garages, so. And it is good that it's divided up as far as the entrance to each of the buildings. So I like that part of it. I am concerned that it is still going to be a little bit, in the traffic way from the school and the church and everything there, a couple times a day, but that road is that way already, so you have to work around it, I guess. That's all I have.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Espinosa?
Well, first of all, I appreciate all the, testimony input we heard tonight, and thank the public for coming out and expressing their concerns. A lot of good discussion, good points being made related to population increases, traffic, construction noise, change of character to community. But in looking at the project, I think that, does it, is it well planned? And the answer, in my mind, is it is a well planned project. And does it also provide affordable housing opportunities, which it does, and primarily for us, in terms of us as a planning commission, does it comply and meet the requirements with zoning and planning laws? And I'm confident that in the work the staff did and what we're seeing here and with the project overall. So I do think that the point made about the four-way stop is a very important and good point and should be considered. But other than that, that's all I have.
Yeah. And I always appreciate the public's input as well, and I appreciate the owner's right to make their property productive, and by having the public input and written input and everything, it hopefully puts into design to mitigate the concerns of the neighborhood the best we can without prohibiting someone from making their property productive. And I know the constant struggle we have as a city, and a lot of cities do, but we want to protect the green belts between the cities, which I think Camarillo's done a pretty good job. We've enacted SOAR, and and have buffer zones that'll probably never be built on, but then the state push to provide housing, the only thing left is to come in with infill project, and I think that's what the kind of the trade-off. We're going to see more of that, and the trade-off for protecting the Greenbelt, which we have the beautiful buffers between the different cities here that I think everybody enjoys. So it's always unfortunate to be next to a new project, but usually the project you're living in, the people before them had the same concerns with your project too. So I think our job is to make sure the developer complies with what his legal requirements are, and then get input from people that live in the area. And we don't live in the area, so sometimes we're not aware of the impact it's going to have without your input. So we really do appreciate your input, and staff takes that in too, and tries to incorporate into design to mitigate that. I think, sometimes the preference is to do nothing with the project, and I think that's just not realistic. So the next best thing is to have it where it mitigates the concerns the best that we can legally do. So anyway, with that being said, I think we're ready to call for a resolution. And
Resolution number PC 2019-7, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving residential plan development permit request by Lustra Development, LLC, for the development of an 11,830 square foot apartment complex consisting of 8 two-bedroom rental units on approximately 0.34 acre site located at the southeast corner of Glen Drive and Chapel Drive in the city's residential plan development zone, further described as RPD-202.
We're going to make a motion.
I would like to make a motion to waive full reading of the resolution and recommend approval of the resolution as read.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Talmadge.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Vandermolen. Please vote. And that passes 4-0 with one abstain. Thank you very much. So I think we just move right into number 9, huh? Maybe